Are you considering installing an underground and dog fence and wondering what tools you may need to have on hand? Then this is the video for you. Hey folks, it's Adam with Outdoor Pet Solutions. For those of you who don't already know, I own and operate Outdoor Pet Solutions. We install underground pet containment systems as well as high-end pet doors. And on this channel, I try to help fellow DIYers, guiding them through the process of installing an underground pet containment system or a pet door, just like I do as a professional. And in this video, we're gonna get in the van and I'm gonna go through the various tools that I use to install these fence systems. And you may be surprised to learn that a lot of these tools that I'm gonna show you are pretty basic and you might have a lot of them already on hand. So let's check them out. Okay, so we've got the van unloaded here and I've got all the tools laid out that I use for installing an underground pet containment system. So if you're doing an underground dog fence, these are the tools that you will need if you want to install it in such a way that it won't give you issues down the road. In other words, like a professional. So I warranty my installations, so I want them to last as long as possible. I'm pretty particular on how I install these systems so that it just really reduces any issues that you might have down the road. So let's get safety out of the way first. You're going to want to invest in a pair of safety glasses, some working gloves, and then knee pads. Knee pads are my friend. I'm on my knees all the time installing these types of dog fences that are underground, so invest in a pair of knee pads and that'll make your job a little bit easier as well. So we're going to go through each one of these tools in the order in which that I actually use them on a job. First thing I will do is lay out the dog fence perimeter with the customer. So if you order your OPS 1000 dog fencing kit, it'll come with the boundary flags. So use a few of those boundary flags to lay out the cable that you're going to put underground and get your bearings on how you want to install that. In the instructions, it's going to start with installing the transmitter in the garage and running the twisted pair outside and then working your way around the yard with the boundary. And you can certainly do it that way. That's the way I used to do it. But I kind of flip things around these days because of the heat of the day. I don't want to be out digging in the dirt when the temps are higher in the summer. So I'll start with burying the cable first and then I'll go back and install the transmitter. So we're going to start out with the tools that I use to actually bury the cable. I get a lot of questions when it comes to burying the cable. I get customers that'll ask how deep they should go with the cable and things like that. And to be honest, there's no depth requirement to burying the fence cable. The wire that you're putting out in the yard can literally be stapled on the surface of the ground and let the grass grow up through it. Burying it underground is simply just a way to keep it from being a trip hazard and reduce the damage that can be caused to it just by daily activity, mowing and things like that. Getting it in the ground a couple of inches to hold it in place is all you really need to do. Obviously, I have a commercial grade cable laying machine. This cuts a trench and lays the cable for me. I need to be very efficient because I'm out installing these every day. But what you can use is simply just a basic shovel. Now this is what I actually used when I first got into the business, believe it or not. I didn't have the money to buy a fence machine like this. So I went around the yard, opening up a trench using this flathead shovel, and then I'd go back and I'd tuck the wire under the ground. I've got a video where I walk you through exactly the technique I use to do that. It's very quick and efficient. And a matter of fact, a review was just recently posted on Google where I walked a customer through on how to use this after they tried renting one of the Easy Trencher cable laying machines you can get like at the local Lowe's and Home Depot. Those machines at first glance seem like they're a great idea. They will cause a lot of aggravation, a lot more than they're worth. So I would save your money on renting a machine or trying to find some creative way to get the fence installed. Whereas if you were just to go out with this shovel and use the technique I show you in that video, you're going to be in a lot better shape. So that's the very first thing you're going to need, a flathead shovel. What you don't want to use is a spade shovel shaped like that. This won't give you a nice clean trench to open up to put the wire in. And you don't want to use a trench shovel. That's what this is called. It's for digging wider trenches. So don't use that either. The flathead shovel is what you want. Now they come in different widths, but the most common is this 6 to 8 inch width. So all I do is use the flathead shovel. I sink it in the ground a couple of inches, about a 45-degree angle, and I lift forward, just like I'm showing you in that video. That'll just open up the soil a couple of inches deep, allowing you to tuck the wire in behind. So what do I use to tuck the wire? I have this guy right here. This is called a weeding tool. The weeding tool is something you can buy in the garden department at Lowe's or Home Depot. It'll come with a very sharp set of forks on it, designed to get into the roots of a weed and pry it out of the ground. So what I do is I take this tool and I actually grind down the end of it into a moon shape. As you roll out your roll of wire, you'll use the half moon that you've grinded down in there to grab the wire and tuck it on into the slot that you opened up with your flathead shovel. The shovel and the weeding tool are really all you need to get your fence cable installed in the ground. Also in my toolbox, I have these. These are landscape fabric staples. They're only 4 inches long. I talk about these in that same video where I'm showing you the various ways you can install the fence cable, whether you're going to bury it or simply just tack it on the surface of the ground. The reason I have these is because when I'm going through flower beds and areas like that, I don't like to bury the cable all the way in the dirt, because what happens is the customer will come back in behind in that flower bed and they'll move the mulch out of the way and they'll just start digging, and the chances of them hitting that wire are pretty good. So to avoid that damage from occurring, I will just move the mulch out of the way, I'll lay my wire in place, and then I'll tack it with these staples along the surface, and then that way when the customer comes back, or you yourself and you want to do some planting in your flower beds, just move the mulch out of the way and you'll know right away if you're going to be digging in the area where the wire is. All right, also in my toolbox, when I'm out installing the wire underground, I have a pair of wire strippers. Now, that should be pretty self-explanatory. You're going to want a pair of wire strippers that can accommodate solid core copper up to 14 gauge. The 14 gauge is what's included in your OPS 1000 dog fencing kit, and that wire is very, very thick, and it has a thick jacket on it as well. So make sure you've got a pair of wire strippers that can accommodate 14 gauge cable. The twisted pair that comes in your kit is of 16 gauge. It's a slightly smaller gauge because it's double wrapped with the 2 lines. If your wire strippers can accommodate 14 gauge, then they should be able to accommodate the 16 gauge solid core as well. And then of course I've also got plenty of splices in my toolbox on the trencher. These are the wire nuts and the grease capsules that come in your kit. These will keep your connections as you're making splices around the yard, as you're going through different obstacles and things like that. And then when you splice it back, your boundary wire, when you splice it back to your twisted pair, this is what you'll be using to make those connections. It keeps them nice and watertight, because as I've explained in previous videos, moisture is not your friend. If the copper starts getting corroded, it's going to diminish the fence signal and your collars are going to stop responding. So splicing them together properly will ensure they last a lifetime. All right, so when you're out installing your boundary wire, you may come across concrete, like your concrete driveway or a walkway, and so I'll go over the tools that I use to get through those. Previously, I made a video of how I crossed concrete using what's called a K12 or a concrete saw, but this is what I use out professionally on these jobs. When you cut through the concrete, it's going to make a big dusty mess, and so I use the leaf blower to clean up the driveway and blow that dust out of the way before I seal back on top of it. Obviously, you're not going to go out and spend thousands of dollars on a commercial concrete saw to install your dog fence just one time. So my suggestion is, and how I used to do it when I first got started, is just use a simple skill saw. An electric skill saw will work just fine to cut the necessary slot or the groove in the concrete that you need so you can embed the wire in. Just be sure you're using the appropriate blade. I actually use this saw to cut into brick walls when I'm installing pet doors. It's a diamond masonry blade that is used to cut brick or block. So that's what you're going to want to look for. This one has seen better days. It's a bit thin, But if you can find one that's got a decent thickness to it, that way when you cut that slot, it's going to be wide enough for you to embed that wire into the concrete. And obviously the extension cord is so you can run your skill saw out in the driveway. You're going to want to make sure your extension cord is long enough and it's got a heavy enough gauge to it so it can handle the load that you're going to be putting on your skill saw as you cut across that concrete. Now remember, you're not going very deep with this. You're only scoring the top of that concrete, typically in an expansion joint groove that's already there. You're just going to go down about a 1/2 inch deep and embed the wire in the concrete, and then you're going to seal on top of it. So speaking of sealing across the concrete, I use a electric caulking gun like this one here. It's made by Rigid, it's battery operated, and I can adjust the speed in which the plunger is moving so it deploys the sealant at the pace that I want it to. This is an absolute lifesaver for me because I'm caulking across driveways every day of the week, and sometimes there's been jobs where I've had to seal up 100 feet of concrete. To do that with a standard caulk gun by squeezing this over and over and over again, my arm couldn't take it anymore. So obviously I upgraded to this electric one. If you happen to have one, the batteries that are used with this gun are the same batteries I have on my drills, my hammer drills, and so it's very convenient. This I think was like 99 bucks at Home Depot, but if you have a standard caulking gun at home, it'll be just fine. You're caulking across the driveway one time, don't worry about it. Your arm should be just fine, your hand should be just fine after doing it. But basically you're just going to use a caulk gun to run your sealant into the groove after you've installed the wire in that slot that you cut with your concrete saw. Now there's 3 different tubes here. I've got a brown tube. It's Dynaflex Ultra. It's made by DAP. You can pick it up at Lowe's or Home Depot. It's the brown color. Now I use this on red aggregate. That's that brown or red looking aggregate driveway with the exposed rock. This color, when it dries, blends in very nicely with that color driveway. The gray obviously is for gray concrete. Most driveways are just standard brushed gray concrete, and this is made by DAP as well, and it's for concrete. It's for filling cracks and things like that. Gray color, it'll match nicely. So that's what I use on gray concrete. And the gray is for the gray aggregate as well. I forgot to mention, there's gray aggregate and red aggregate is what they call it, at least here in the Nashville area. And so I'll use the gray for the gray aggregate as well. And then the black is for blacktop. So if you have a blacktop driveway, you can use actual blacktop filler if you'd like, but I find that this Dynaflex Ultra in the black color works really well to fill in that small little joint, and it stays put and it flexes nicely with the asphalt and lasts a really long time. And something I forgot to mention earlier, if you have an asphalt driveway, you're not going to have the expansion joints or those grooves running across your drive like you would with a concrete driveway. So getting your line straight across the drive as nice and straight as you want is going to be challenging if you don't have a guide. So I suggest investing in a chalk line. That way you can stretch that line across your asphalt. This is a blue chalk that I use. Red can work really well as also, but just pop that line across your asphalt, and then you'll be able to score across using your skill saw to cut that slot to put the wire in nice and straight. So that pretty much covers all the tools that you'll need to install the wire outside in the ground. When it comes to installing the transmitter inside, these are the tools I like to use to get that portion of the job completed. So the first thing I do is determine where I'm going to enter into the garage to run the pre-twisted wire out to the boundary. And in this video here, I show you how I do all that. So be sure to check out that video. I'll walk you through step by step how to run the wire and drill through the wall and all that. But the tools I'm using in that video, we'll start off with the drill itself. Now this is a Rigid drill that has various settings to it, including a hammer drill setting. It's so that it can get through a brick wall if that's what you're working with. And of course you're gonna need a masonry bit. Now this is a 3/8 inch, 18 inch long bit. This is what I use to go through various thicknesses of walls. So typically a 12-inch bit will be just fine to get through standard depths of walls, but sometimes I'm going through block and brick and drywall, and that all adds up. So I go with an 18-inch long, 3/8 inch thick masonry bit to drill through. Now, of course, if you have vinyl siding or wood siding, then a standard wood bit will be just fine, and you don't need to invest in a hammer drill. You can use a standard drill of your choice. This is also 3/8 inch, 18 inches long. Once you've gotten through the wall, then you're going to fish your twisted wire through the wall from the outside, going over to where you're going to mount the transmitter. So what I actually like to do is take a flag, one of your boundary flags out of your kit, and I strip the vinyl flag off, and then you're left with that little metal stem. And then I take that metal stem and I wrap electrical tape around it and on the end of the wire, and I fish it through the wall that way. But before you do that, you want to protect that wire as it exits the ground and goes up through the wall. So in order to protect the wire, you should fish it through some sort of protective pipe. And I use 1/2 inch PVC pipe. I also use 1/2 inch gray conduit pipe. The only reason I have gray and white is for different exterior finishes. A lot of homes are trimmed out in white, or they have white siding, things like that. So the white blends most of the time the best, believe it or not. But sometimes I'll switch to the gray just so it blends with a darker finish. So what you'll do is, before you tape that metal stem to the end of your pre-twisted white cable like this, you'll want to fish it through the pipe that's going to protect it as it comes out of the ground, up the wall, and then through the wall. So you're going to want to cut this to length, and in order to do that, I use a pair of PVC pipe cutters. These are pretty commonplace. You can find these just about anywhere: Lowe's, Home Depot, Ace Hardware. But a hacksaw will work, a wood saw, just a hand wood saw will work to cut your pipe. But I like using these because it's quick and easy. But once you've cut this to length to get to the hole that you're going to go through through the wall, I like to use these elbows to give it a nice clean finish at the end where it goes into the wall. But as you notice, this isn't going to fit flush up against the wall. There's going to be a gap. And so I actually cut these elbows. I cut one end of it flush, as I show you in that video there. And in order to cut this elbow, these pipe cutters are the best thing to use, because you can get a nice, clean, straight cut using these. But one thing to consider is the PVC pipe is soft. PVC fittings, like these 90-degree elbows, are a lot more brittle. So if you were to take these cutters and start cutting the end of that elbow off, there's a good chance you're going to crack it and it's going to snap on you, and it will be just one gnarly little, it'll be a gnarly cut. So before you do that, I use a heat gun. I'll take a heat gun and just heat this up for about 10, 15, 20 seconds, and then I'll go ahead and cut through it using these cutters, and it'll cut like butter, nice and clean and straight. If you don't have a heat gun, that's okay. Use a hair dryer. Most people have a hair dryer at home. Use a hair dryer, find just enough to heat that plastic up to where the cutters will cut through it nicely. So once I've got my hole drilled, my pipe cut to length, I've got my elbow trimmed off, I will then fish the twisted pair up through the pipe and then out the other end of the elbow. And then I'll tape that metal stem to the end of the twisted wire and then fish it through the wall. It should feed like a needle right through the wall and exit out the other side. And once it comes through the other side, I like to use these, I call them speaker wire grommets. They're sold at Lowe's, Home Depot. They come in like a 2-pack. These give you a nice clean finish on the inside of the wall where you fish that wire through the drywall. And these are pretty self-explanatory. You just push it on through, You just push it on through into the wall, and then your wire will exit out the other side. And then once you get to the transmitter, again, you're going to need to use your drill to mount the mounting plate, preferably into a stud. And then once you get that mounted, you're going to tack the cable and the wire up to the transmitter using these staples I like to use. They're just 1/2 inch cable staples, and you just use a standard hammer, obviously, to drive those into the wall and to tack your wire along the wall and up to the transmitter and make it look nice and neat like I do in that video. Now once I get the transmitter mounted and the wires all connected, I'll go back outside and pull the slack through the pipe that was on the outside. Now you'll need to mount the pipe to the exterior of the wall, and to do that I use these brackets here. They're just 1/2 inch single hole brackets that I use to secure the pipe to the wall, and just snap on just like that, and then you can just mount it to the wall. Now depending on the exterior wall finish, you're going to want to get the appropriate screws. I keep Tapcons. These are the blue screws that you can get at Lowe's and Home Depot. They're made to mount into concrete, brick, mortar, and make sure you get the matching bit to do that. If it's a vinyl sided house or wood siding, obviously you can just use any wood screw to mount the bracket and the pipe to the wall. And there you have it. Those are the tools I use to professionally install an underground dog fence. As you can see, it takes just basic tools. They're inexpensive, and you probably have a lot of them laying around your home already. And if you don't, it's not going to cost a fortune to go invest in a few hand tools to get the job done. Just be sure to follow my tips and tricks that I've got in that blue folder in the OPS 1000 dog fencing kit that walks you through step by step, and more importantly, how to properly train your dog to the fence system. If you're in the market for an underground dog fence and you're looking for the absolute best, check out the OPS 1000 on my website. There'll be a link down in the description, and you can order yours today with shipping included. And as always, thanks for watching. Goodbye.